Hello, this is Igenegba, and today we're taking the last chapter of our book, Leave. And the chapter is titled Don't Look Back. I like this chapter first of all because I think it's a beautiful topic for the last chapter. Also, because it speaks of something that I believe everyone should be careful about. Many times we say things like no retreat, no surrender, don't look back. Once you've started, don't stop, keep going. But many times in our lives, we actually look back, but we don't know we're doing it. And it's because every day, it seems like we're progressing. We change houses, we change cars, we change jobs, and it seems like, hey, I'm going on with life. But we really can't tell that in many aspects of our lives, we are actually looking back. And in this chapter, I'm going to show you how this can typically happen and without people even knowing. But what is most crucial is that we are careful to recognize the symptoms of looking back in our lives. So take, for example, the children of Israel. These people had come out of Egypt. God had delivered them by his mighty right hand. He had spoken through Moses. They had done signs and wonders, and they had seen him part the Red Sea. But somehow, when they were in the midst of the wilderness, they found themselves constantly asking for garlic and onions. They found themselves constantly, disapproving of God's choices for them. They constantly found themselves asking God for the things they thought they were lacking, the things they thought they were supposed to have and didn't have. But the question is, how did they define what they should have and what they should not have? How did they come up with the idea of what they were lacking? It was simply because of what they were used to. They were used to onions and garlic. They were used to the food that they ate in Egypt. So even when God was trying to deliver them, even when God was trying to move them, even when God was trying to take them out of captivity and take them into a place of liberation, they were not willing to change. God had changed their location, but their taste buds were still the same. And so many times we don't know we are looking back because we are sticking to the things we're used to. We're sticking to our former paradigms. We're sticking to our former perspectives. And because those things never hurt us in any way, so we feel God shouldn't have a problem with it. I mean, what did onions do to them? What did garlic do to them? It was food. They were used to it. It was good for them. Never would they have imagined that God had a problem with them asking for onions and garlic. And many times we are like that. God is bringing us into a new place, and we keep saying, hey, God, what about John? What about, Julius? What about George? And God is saying, can you just look forward towards Joey that I'm trying to get you to marry? And stop asking me for the things that are past. And you're thinking, but God, well, there's nothing wrong with marrying a tall, dark, and handsome guy. I don't necessarily have to marry someone who doesn't meet my criteria. And so at the end of the day, it wasn't really about onions and garlic. It wasn't really about food. It wasn't really about what they were eating. What it was a dissatisfaction inside of them. What it was a lack of conviction regarding the journey they were embarking on. Because the truth is, the moment you make up your mind and recognize the fact that you're on a journey with God, you begin to recognize the fact that there are prices to be paid, there are decisions to be made, things you must do, sacrifices to be made because of the journey that you're making. And many times, people don't recognize the fact that they need to sacrifice in order to journey forward. And then we keep looking back to the things that we're used to, the things we have defined as best for us. And that's why we must recognize that God would never fund our excesses. God would never fund, the things that we feel bring us satisfaction. God would always take care of the essentials. Fine, he could give us the things we want and spoil us every now and then. But the truth is, he's not trying to raise a bunch of spoiled children. He's trying to raise an army that would not only take over the world, but rule the universe with him. So we have to begin to learn these disciplines now that we're on the earth and learn to focus on where we are headed as opposed to where we are coming from. And in this chapter, we're going to look at it really closely because if we've gone through the whole book, we've talked about the soul audit, we've talked about unbroken, we've talked about finding Mordecai and all this great stuff. The question is it possible to lose all these lessons you've learned in a heartbeat? Is it possible to maybe lose it in a trickle without knowing you're losing it because you're looking back? Yes, absolutely, it's really possible, to actually lose out on your future because you keep staring at the past And the past is always a thief of the things that are to come, because it keeps standing as a reference point and as a point of comparison, for the things that God is doing for you. So I pray that as we go through this chapter, the Lord is just going to help you to be able to see the areas in your life where you have been comparing, where you have been asking God over and over again for onions and garlic, when God is trying to say to you, hey, be creative with your manna, be creative with the manna that you see that I'm giving to you every day. Be creative and see what else can possibly come out of it. Our posture in response to God's path for us should always be that of one on a journey, always ready to move forward, putting behind the things that are past, looking forward to all the Lord has for us, pressing in daily. And we see that in Luke 9 verse 62 it says, Jesus answered, anyone who starts plowing and keeps looking back isn't worth a thing to God's kingdom. So in God's kingdom, our worth is not just the fact that we are plowing. Our worth is not just in the fact that we are serving God. Our worth is not just in the fact that, we go to church every day. We are, consistent, at doing the things we're supposed to do for God. Our worth is in the fact that we don't keep dragging the Lord into yesterday. Are you that kind of Christian that has to be encouraged daily to go on, to not step out of the faith, to not fail, to not, give up? Or are you that Christian that is always, in step with the Holy Spirit, always ready to move forward with God? And so in Genesis, we see Abraham's negotiations with God over the salvation of Lot from the pending destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. The city at this time had become morally and spiritually dark, with the people having neither fear nor reverence for godly values and standards. They had erected for themselves laws, carnal, earthly, sensual, demonic standards, which deadened their consciences and convinced them anything was acceptable as long as they believed it was right. In Ezekiel 16:49-50, the prophet deconstructs the very foundation of the sins they committed. Behold, this was what the guilt of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters had pride, excess of food, and prosperous ease, but did not aid the poor and the needy. They were haughty and did an abomination before me, so I removed them when I saw it. I've heard many people say that the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah, the reason why God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah was because they were homosexuals. That's not completely true. That's not how Ezekiel explains it. He named a couple of things. He said, hey, listen, these guys were greedy, they were proud and arrogant, and they ate excess food. They were gluttons. They were at ease in their prosperity, and they did not help the poor and the needy. This was why God removed them. Now, let's take, for example, if Sodom and Gomorrah existed today, a country where people could literally just go to bed and they didn't have to work, they were lazy, they were gluttons, they were constantly at ease, one would have thought that that kind of country is the kind of place where anybody would want to live. As a matter of fact, if it existed today, many people will be migrating to Sodom and Gomorrah to find safety, to find a good life, to want to live the better life, to live the Sodom and Gomorrah dream, because that was the kind of country everyone wants to belong to. But you see, God looked at them and said, no, it's not good enough. Now, the thing about looking back is, it's not about good or bad, black or white. The question is, the foundation of what is being done in that city, is it the Lord? I remember one time when I was going to go do a course in a particular country, and I was convinced that, I had to go do a course outside of Nigeria. And I had prepared, I researched on this country. I spent all night just looking into them, and I was super, super excited. But I hadn't asked the Lord about this decision. I just thought, hey, God, I'm sure you would want me to go to this country. And I remember going to bed that night and saying, Lord, just speak to me. Just tell me, is this your will or not? And that night I had a dream. In this dream, I found myself in the in the bottom of this country, more like the foundation of the country. I was underneath the ground, like I was several feet beneath the ground. And while I was there, I saw all kinds of demonic hosts, like all kinds of ugly demonic spirits that were trying to attack me. And I kept running. And at some point, I had angelic assistance, and the angel told me what path to take. And then he fought off the demons, and I was able to escape. And I remember coming out of the foundation of this country and saying to my brethren that were my brothers and my sisters that had gone with me, in the dream. And I said, we have to leave, we have to leave, we have to leave. And they said, why? I said, it's a beautiful city built on demonic foundations. It's a beautiful city built on demonic foundations. We have to go. And I kept saying it over and over until I woke up. And then I realized what the Lord was saying to me. The Lord was trying to tell me that, look, this city looks beautiful. This city looks like the place where you want to go. You want to go do a 6-month course. But I think the Lord was trying to tell me that, look, Isi, you are not ready for what is in that city. And if you're going in there in your office, you're going in there as who you are. And I think the Lord was trying to tell me, no, that's not the kind of battle you want to go and fight now. And so many times we just go into things because we think it's a neutral ground, because we think, oh, it's okay, there's nothing wrong with it, and we keep looking forward to them, and we even crave them, and we even hunger for them. But the question is, have you seen what the root of that thing is? Has the Lord opened your eyes to see the foundation of that thing you are desiring? So Sodom and Gomorrah at that time looked like a prosperous city. From the outside, it looked like what should be desired, but the root and the foundation of their lives were demonic. The activities they performed, the way they lived was demonic. And so the Lord removed them from the midst of the earth because of their ways. What we do not realize is, when we compromise who we are, our understanding of God is stifled and reduced and limited to the world and standards that we live in now. What is most crucial is that we must remember that in as much as God would put certain standards in our lives, and it just seems like, Lord, but why can't I have it just like Lot's wife? We must always remember that every time we compromise on God's standard, what we're doing is that we are devaluing ourselves and making it harder and harder for us to receive God or to understand God. So obedience in itself promotes you in the spirit. Obedience in itself increases your knowledge of God. Obedience in itself promotes you in the things of the spirit, gives you authority and power. So it is important that we keep obeying God and keep standing in obedience as it pertains to not looking back. Using Lot as an example, his life and his family and his children. Remember the story in which the angels had come to deliver Lot, and when they came into the city, the men of the city said, hey, bring those men out, let us sleep with them. And Lot, refused and all of that. But guess what? What was Lot's option for releasing the angels? His daughter that was a virgin. I mean, this was how much Lot's mind had been bastardized, that he thought to himself, oh, it's a better option if I will not release the angels for the men of the city to sleep with. Let me give them my virgin daughter. Can you imagine that? That's to tell you that sometimes you are in a place and you feel, I'm withstanding it with my righteousness. But little by little, it is affecting your mindset, and it is affecting the variables in your mind and the possibilities that you have or you produce for solutions. And Lot, at that moment, could not have understood the intensity with which God wanted to destroy the city. And even presenting that option, he probably did not even see, what it was. And it's the same thing with us. Sometimes God is saying, get up, leave the place where you are at, leave that job, leave that friendship, leave that relationship, leave that country. Sometimes God is pulling you away from a place that is, darkening his counsel for your life, that is corrupting the seed of righteousness in you, and you cannot see it simply because you're thinking, oh, I'm not being corrupted, I'm righteous in the midst of unrighteousness. But the Lord is saying, no, you don't get it. Your standards are falling. The way you are thinking is changing. And so many times, until the Lord forcefully drags us out of the city, the way he did with Lot and his family, many times we don't even know how far we have fallen. Now, Lot's wife, I don't understand why that woman looked back, but we could say that about her, but the truth is a lot of times we do that. God pulls us away from a place and we're turning back to see, how is the place doing? Or God delivers you from an abusive relationship and you're constantly checking the person out on Instagram to say, oh, is he married now? His wife is not even as fine as me. Look at his children. They're not even as fine as mine. We're constantly looking back at the places the Lord has pulled us away from. Sometimes it may not even be checking them out on social media. Sometimes it could just be in your heart. You just take this posture in your heart where you're like, you know what, God, punish them and make sure they know you're punishing them for my sake. Those things are not scriptural. Why are you even looking back? Why are you even desirous to have your name revenged if you have moved on, if you have moved forward? But what this woman did not understand was the power attached to her obedience. She did not understand also the power attached to her disobedience. Now, they were leaving the city. I'm sure she heard the screams, she heard the cries as the hail and the fire came down on the city. Maybe she looked back because she thought of her friends that she was leaving behind. Maybe she looked back because she thought of their beautiful house. Maybe she looked back because of their investment. There was something in her that was still connected to the city. And in the natural, you will say, you know what, I don't blame her. It's only natural. But the moment she looked back, something happened. She could have turned into anything else. She could have turned into a pillar of coal. She could have turned into a rock. She could have turned into a stone. But why did she turn into salt? Because God was trying to teach us an eternal lesson. Now, salt represents your grace, your virtue, your value. Jesus said you are the salt of the earth. And everywhere the salt is, it brings flavor and savor. The moment she looked back, she was losing her savor. She was losing her virtue, her value. Now, put it into context. Every time God has delivered you from a place or from a thing or from a situation and you keep losing back, what is happening to you is that you are losing your strength. You are giving your past power over your future, and you become paralyzed in your future. You become paralyzed in the way you decide, in the things you want to do in the future. And God is saying, stop that. Don't look back. Forget about it. Forget about what happened. I am the God that justifies. I am the God that rectifies. I am the God that will give you the name, and I am the God that glorifies. Forget about that. Your past is my business as God. Your future is yours to work out. So follow me and don't look back. So I want to encourage somebody listening to me today. Perhaps you are still stuck in the hurt of yesterday. You are still stuck in the pain of a divorce. You are still stuck in the brokenness of a job that you lost or a deal that you lost. Hear me. The Lord is fully aware of what you are giving up. The Lord is fully aware of what you have lost. The Lord is fully aware of what has left your hands. The Lord is fully aware of the fact that you had such a good name and such a great name, and now people think you are nothing. Hear me. He's a God of restoration. He's a God of reconciliation. He's a God that gives us double, even much more, for the things that we have lost. If only we can trust him. They were going forward to what? She didn't know what they were going forward to. She didn't have a clear picture of the future. They just said, oh, go towards that hill, go towards that village. What does that even mean? And that's how we feel sometimes, like, Lord, what does it even mean? You are asking me to go there. For what reason? For what purpose? What benefit is it to me? In your following, in quote, blindly, lies your strength and your power as a believer. Because as long as she looked forward, as long as she went forward, as long as she did not look back, she had the protection of the angels of God. But the moment she looked back, there was nothing they could do. There are many times when it seems like God is powerless to save us. And it's not because he's powerless. It's just because we have fallen out of his parameters. And so God is saying, please stay within the boundaries of grace for your life. When you look back, you step out of the boundaries of grace. Stay within the boundaries of grace so that you don't end up losing things, so that you don't end up turning into a pillar of salt. A pillar never moves. It's just where it is. 10 years later, you are still singing the same songs about your glory of 10 years ago. God wants to show you that it's from glory to glory, from grace to grace, from strength to strength. And that whatever he did yesterday, or whatever the enemy did to you yesterday, has got no power over your future. And God can only do as much as you are willing to give him authority to do. And the authority you give to God in this scenario is that you say, okay, you know what? I turn my back on the things that are past. and I press forward to the things that are ahead. And sometimes God is not only telling us to not look back at pain, but sometimes God is telling us to not look back at glory. So you did something great yesterday. You released a fantastic album yesterday. You know, you did a great deal yesterday. You met a president yesterday. So what? Stop looking back at the things that have happened. What about the things that God has for you? This is the reason why many people commit suicide. Many people take their lives because they just can't see anything in